courage to experiment with it. I was really scared because I thought, I'm just going to come up with nothing here. And they have found that some people are better than other people. Some people naturally have gifts. Some people can play the piano, and some people can sing. And the rest of us can learn if we want to. We may not be as gifted as others, but we all have, to some extent, have that capacity if we practice it. And it's sometimes a little scary when we see that this stuff works. Wow.
Do you ever have an opportunity to talk with young writers or people that are just starting out, or do you give classes or seminars or anything online?
No.
Gotcha.
Once in a while I will meet a young writer and have the chance to talk a little bit if they're interested. That meeting with Ray Bradbury, when I've heard him give a talk, and that really impressed me. And then later when I finished my first book and sent it out for its first rejection, I wrote a letter to Ray, and I said, you don't know me, but I was at that talk you gave in Long Beach, California. You really impressed me. You convinced me that I could do this, and I've just sent out the first manuscript of my first book, and I don't know what's going to happen, but thank you, Ray Bradbury. And he wrote back 2 pages, hand-typed, single-spaced, thanking me. He said, you will never be able to repay your gift to me, and I can never repay my gift to Frederick Pohl or whoever it was who had helped him. The only way you can do that is to pass it along. The only way I can repay my gift to the man who helped me so much is to help you. And it goes on. You pass the torch, Richard. You pass the torch. So from time to time that has happened. I used to give talks. I do very rarely now. But I'll talk about writing, or I'll be talking about airplanes that are flying. I'm coming up here before too long. And I like to do that once in a while. But no, I don't have any kind of program. I think it's kind of for every writer. The best thing you could say to a young writer is don't write. Don't even try it. It's too hard. And then if they do it anyway, then they're destined to be a writer, because you have to go through this difficult thing. You don't have to, but most of us seem to go through difficult times on the road.
Let's talk a little bit about Hypnotizing Maria, your book that was released in 2009. That's the most recent book, correct?
Well, that's the most recent book, and it was, like all the books, startling. It came, how do I say? I've spent most of my life flying airplanes. That's one of my great loves. And I flew in the Air Force, and flew in little airplanes and all that kind of thing. And I was a flight instructor. One of the jobs that I held was a flight instructor. And it wasn't until decades later, till just a few years ago, that I realized as a flight instructor, I almost never touched the controls of the airplane. I sat there next to the student, my arms folded, saying, now you might try to just lift the nose a little bit higher here and watch what happens. See the airspeed slowing down as you lift the nose? Hold it there. Yeah, hold it there. Now the airplane's going to start to shudder, and we call that a stall. And sure enough, the airplane starts to shudder. And I never touched the controls.
Wow.
And then I suddenly, from this memory, suddenly made sense to me. And I realized what I was doing was I was offering suggestions. And isn't that so much of what happens in all of our lives? Aren't we creatures of suggestion? We accept them or we deny them. We take one day and count how many suggestions, if you can count that high, that come to us from other people, from newspapers, from billboards, from television, from the internet, all these suggestions saying the world is no good, or the world is terrific, or here's what you should do, or here's what you shouldn't do. All these things come to, and we're the ones who decide. We have the final choice. Suggestions come from ourselves. I mustn't do that. That's too dangerous. Or I want to do that. It'll give me a thrill. Whatever. I realize that we are all hypnotized. The definition of hypnotism is suggestion accepted.
Wow.
And that suddenly clicked. And here was this, all of a sudden, this story just, bam, was there. And the opening chapter of the book is my character, who is a lot like me. He's a flight instructor, and he's flying across the country, and he hears this woman's voice on the radio saying, help me, my husband, I think my husband's died. And he happens to, the voice is pretty loud and clear, so she's fairly close, and he comes on the air, he talks with her a little bit and finds out where she is. She said, I can't fly. And he finds her in the air, and he is, all he does is did what I did for a long time. He just gave her suggestions. Say, hey, you're flying fine. You just kind of keep those wings level, and you'll be fine. I'll find you in a minute. And sure enough, he does. He joins up on her wing in formation. He just talks to her, really calm, and he cracks some terrible jokes and all that kind of thing. And he convinces her as they fly along. He said, let's just kind of tilt that little, the wheel in front of you, just tilt it to the right a little bit. There you go. And she swings into this bank. And he's right flying alongside her. He said, okay, now just the other way. Just turn it the other way. Nice and easy. You're doing great. You're doing great. What's your name? And she says, I don't know how to fly. And he says, you've been flying. You're doing fine. I'm right here. I'm an instructor. Voice of authority, right? I'm an instructor. Don't worry. And sure enough, he flies her over to Cheyenne and makes a big wide pattern, and he just stays right on her wings. Pull the power back a little bit now. Now you want to ease the nose up. You're doing great. You're right on the center line. It's right together. 2 airplanes coming down. And he says, your wheels are going to touch in about 5 seconds. Everything's going to be fine. Then just pull that little black handle, pull that little throttle back. Sure enough, squeak, squeak, her wheels touch. Meanwhile, he's called the tower, and the fire trucks come out, and the ambulance come out for her husband. And he said, now all you have to do is just pull that thing out and step on the little brakes on the top of the rudder pedals, and they're right behind you. They'll be with you right away. Then he just pushes the throttle forward. As she lands, he just goes on. He said, hey, I do this all the time. I'm a flight instructor. And then he realizes later on, he has some meetings with some strange characters and realizes that he sees in the next day at the airport where he lands, someone's taken a newspaper clipping and pinned it to the wall of this lady who was saved by this mystery person who appeared alongside. He hypnotized me. She said, he hypnotized me. I can't fly an airplane, but I did. I landed it. And he thought, how silly, hypnotizing. But then he realized, of course, that it does. And then that applies to all other aspects of his life, and he realizes that, sees how he can change the events that are coming to him by crafting the suggestions that he accepts.
That's awesome.
It's kind of interesting, and it's one of those books where relatively few people have read it. I don't think it'll ever be a bestseller, but it's touched a few people, and I've gotten a letter or two, which is rare. I don't get much mail at all, but a few people have written about Hypnotizing Maria and have enjoyed the book, and that's what it's all about. That's my job, is to take the time that they wouldn't take to play with this particular idea and then present it to them. Say, is this interesting or not? And if it is, then my job is done.
I often say right now to people to be very mindful what kind of suggestions they receive about what's happening on the Gulf Coast. How you have to be rigorous not to accept all these suggestions because it goes into automatic pilot.
Sure. There's just wonderful developments on that idea. And if you want to get technical about it, there's a book written called The Many Worlds Interpretation of Quantum Mechanics by Hugh Everett III, published by the Princeton University Press, that says every second this universe splits into alternate universes. We decide which universe we go to by what we accept for true. So right now, according to Hugh Everett and a whole lot of calculus that I can't follow, there are those of us who are saying the oil spill is going to be a disaster, unprecedented, and then there's alternate worlds where they've capped this thing already. There are alternate worlds where it never happened at all, and we kind of pick our way through the universe.